It's now been a week since I completed my challenge of making an entire album in 30 days. The album's been released for about a week and I finally had a chance to just sit back and take some time away from it. While overworking myself in the name of making something is not a surprise to the people who know me, it surprises me every time. Since I finished the challenge, I've had some time to reflect on how it went, sort of the highs, the lows, what went wrong, what I could have done better, and what turned out remarkably well. This video is a reflection on making an album in 30 days. Now let's get one thing out of the way really quick. This is not a professional album. It's certainly not perfect, and I'm not saying that in a depreciative way. I think the songs turned out quite well, but I'm not going to pretend for a single moment that they were mixed or mastered to a professional standard. I just did not have the experience for that. But next time. Brainstorming ideas and actually writing the songs were the first step of this whole process. This was the main thing that I spent the first 10 days working on. On day one, I made a playlist of songs that I was using as inspiration for the album. I had like little ideas of what I wanted it to be, but I honestly had no clue how it would turn out. Looking back at the playlist, you can see the sort of direct connections between the finished songs and the songs that inspired them. But for other songs, I just straight up did not use them as inspiration. And that's okay. The original plan for this album was for it to be a jazz funk album. That's sort of how I opened up this challenge. However, it sort of ended up being a jazz funk rock metal bossa nova album. Personally, I think the variation is quite good, but it certainly surprised me. This is not how I thought it would turn out, especially considering I've never written a rock or metal song before. I remember at the start of the challenge, I was worried that I wouldn't really focus on the lyrics and the music would take precedent, so the lyrics would sort of be an afterthought. But thankfully, that wasn't really the case. The only two songs it's really applicable to is Daydreamer and The Ice Queen, which were the two songs that I'd written a couple of years ago. I changed the lyrics to those very, very drastically. And while the core sections of the songs remained like musically unchanged, I did still make a lot of changes to it. Overall, this part of the process was what I was the most familiar with, and I was pretty happy with how the songs turned out. So that led me to the next stage. The next 10 days were primarily focused around getting my newly written songs into FL Studio, both the accompaniment and the vocals. Now, there was a little bit of overlap. I was still working on finishing the songs, but I also really needed to get started on FL Studio, or else I would be quite behind. Now, I've used FL Studio to make tracks before, but I think this is the first time I've ever made tracks that had singing in them. In the past, I've only ever really made instrumentals and backing tracks. When I first started to record during this challenge, I ran into so many technical issues. Using my keyboard to play the instruments into FL Studio was pretty much plug and play, so no issues there. But connecting my microphone was a much more complicated setup. I eventually figured it out, but to this day, I still don't quite know what I did. Now, I am not the best singer ever. Shocker. But I'm getting better every day. I've been a baritone all my life, and while everybody knows that baritones are appreciated, no songs are ever written for them, including mine apparently. I had to transpose our tone because it was too high for me to sing, so I had to transpose it down a couple of keys and then immediately figure it out and sing it the same day so that I would be on track to finish the album on time. And this quick learning was a bit of a recurring problem throughout the process. If I wanted to add vocal harmonies to a song, I kind of just had to figure them out on the piano app on my phone and then immediately record them. And while some harmonies were easy to figure out, others definitely were not. It was around this time that I sort of had to really lock in and focus on what I was doing for several hours at a time in order to get enough work done each day that I would be done by the end of day 30. And it was during this period that I discovered just how goated the Pomodoro technique is. I would normally use it the way it's intended, 25 minutes of work, 5 minutes of rest. But I also found that whenever I was in a slump, I could just set a timer for 25 minutes to finish doom scrolling or whatever. And then by the end of that period, I would be ready to do some more work again. And that really kept me going for pretty much the rest of the challenge. So just after the 20-day mark, I had pretty much all of my songs recorded. I now know what I would do differently to make it sound better next time. But never mind that, it's time for the next section. This was the part where I had the least experience. I always knew mixing and mastering was an important part of the process, but I now have a bigger appreciation for the people who actually know how to do whatever the hell this is. I watched so many tutorials during the last couple of days trying to get every last bit of information on how I could make this album sound any good. I had a pretty good grasp on how to mix my songs, but because of the 30-day time limit, spoiler, a time limit limits you, for pretty much all of the songs, I didn't get the chance to add as many instruments as I wanted to. It's probably especially clear in the two instrumentals. I wanted to add significantly more instruments to them, but because I had to do them last and I kind of just ran out of time, they are how they are now. C'est la vie. So the mixing was fine. It was all right. But the mastering was where I really felt out of my depth. The amount of information online about loudness, peaking at -1 decibels, dynamic range, all that stuff, it was just too much for me to fully understand in the time that I had. If you've listened to the album, now on Spotify by the way, you might have noticed that it's quieter compared to other songs that are professionally mastered. And that's because I couldn't figure out how to make it louder without also making it peak with the time that I had left. I kept seeing stuff about how Spotify and other streaming platforms normalize your music to like -14 LUFS or whichever one they do for each one, which I still don't quite know what that means, but I can tell you with confidence, it didn't normalize shit. It's the same volume on my computer as it is on Spotify. Also, if you have no idea what I'm talking about right now, that's okay. I don't either. So during this process, I did learn a lot about the mixing and mastering process, but unfortunately the final results suffered a bit because I didn't really know what I was doing. But hey, you live and you learn. The final result of this 30-day album is very much made up of passion rather than experience. Most albums are sort of like curated to have a very specific feeling or a very specific theme. But because of the time limit, I didn't really have the chance to curate it in a way. If I hadn't given myself a time limit, songs like The Ice Queen or Sisyphus might not have been in the album at all, probably just released as singles, because for me personally, I feel that they changed the mood of the album just a bit too much. They're still pretty good songs on their own, but I think in terms of the album, it's a bit jarring. But hey, if you enjoy them, you enjoy them. But for this challenge, I am glad that they're here. This album is pretty much a smorgasbord of all the types of music that I like. And even though it wasn't perfect, I'm glad I made it. After completing this challenge, I feel plenty more inspired now, and whatever I do next, I know I want it to be better, and I'm definitely going to give myself more time. This challenge was an opportunity to hit two birds with one stone. I've wanted to make an album for ages now, which I've now done, and I've wanted to make a YouTube channel for years, but have either been too busy or felt that I had nothing to say. Now that I've gotten over the fear of starting, I have a few ideas for some future videos that I want to make. So if you are interested in games, musical theatre, video essays, or anything else that I decide to put on the screen, subscribe. And I'll be sure to show up in your subscriptions tab every month or so. They say 99% of YouTube enjoyers quit right before a legendary refresh pull. All right, that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time, whenever that may be. Have a good one.